When the COVID pandemic struck China, many farmers could not deliver their produce, and a lot of such produce was rotting in warehouses. Consumers, on the other hand, were stuck at home and eager to cook, probably more than ever before. So, what's a farmer to do? Well, it's 2020, and what you do is, of course, you turn to TikTok. And millions of Chinese farmers did. They turned to TikTok to give tours of their farms to online viewers, teaching their audiences about different varieties of fruits and vegetables, and offering them meal recipes. In fact, more than 100,000 farmers streamed close to 3 million sessions on social media platforms by March of 2020. The number of agricultural content creators rose 6 times from the year before. In May, seeing this growth, the Chinese government called for the expansion of e-commerce coverage of villages in order to boost farmers' incomes. The rural e-commerce talent shortage is expected to increase by over 60% in China by 2025. Think about it, rural e-commerce. I don't think we knew what that even meant just 5 years ago. In the meantime, in the US, the number of independent workers has grown to 51 million according to recent research. Many such independent workers consider themselves creators or influencers, putting out content and getting micropayments from a whole variety of digital platforms, often combining Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and Patreon and many others. In fact, the creators or the influencers today constitute the fastest growing small business segment. Of course, most of these businesses can hardly be called businesses. They're literally one-person operations. Again, note the new term, influencers industry, a concept that was not with us even a few years ago. And there is a growing competition between platforms, large and small, to help spawn and provide services for this new industry segment. As is the case in China, COVID accelerated growth of this category of workers, but the infrastructure for such growth was laid way before the pandemic. The combination of COVID and the global connective technology infrastructure is what propelled the growth of this new category of workers. But rather than living what we think of as glamorous lives, many such creators actually work grueling schedules, having to constantly produce new content, manage audiences and fan interactions, and set up their own payment infrastructure and equipment, basically running alone the whole business that previously required a crew or a firm to operate. And of course, it's exhausting because in the digital dream world, you yourself is the laborer and the boss, the exploited and the exploiter. You are basically the means of production. Not surprisingly, many creators suffer from burnout and mental health issues. This work may seem glamorous, but it's far from it when you're running ragged, working over 60 hours a week just to make a living. It is important also to remember that not all of the people making a living on various digital platforms are young Gen Z creators. In our ethnographic interviews with low-wage workers throughout California, most people we interviewed were engaged in some form of task-based on-demand work using multiple different platforms, often patching together a living in highly precarious ways because they have no other way to make a living. We call this kind of work non-institutional work because those who participate in the on-demand or platform economy are doing it completely on their own. They're not attached to any formal institution of work or labor organizations or have access to traditional workplaces and offices. COVID, of course, has accelerated another phenomenon, people disconnecting from work or deprioritizing work in their lives. You have probably read about many people deciding to leave their jobs, take a break, or just drop out. This is a global phenomenon. In China, Japan, Europe, and the US, A growing number of people, particularly young people, are disconnecting from employment systems, proclaiming that they don't want careers. They want to slow down and sit on a porch and enjoy life. Wouldn't you? This tweet, "I don't want a career, I just want to sit on a porch," generated hundreds and thousands of responses, with people supporting the idea and offering their own alternatives, how they would spend their time rather than work. We see emergence of groups or movements such as the NAP Ministry, dedicated to promoting rest as a form of resistance. Resurrect Rest School is one example of it. It describes itself as a gathering space dedicated to the deep study, teaching, and practice of rest as a resistance framework. The school teachings are based on core principles of Black liberation theology, Afrofuturism, womanism, and communal care. It is in this spirit that our Future for Good fellow, Millicent Johnson, has actually created a fund called Octavia Fund. It's a fund to invest in Black women to give them time and space for rest and restoration. All the examples I just described are what we call signals, indicators of how, spurred by the pandemic and enabled by our technology infrastructure, individuals and groups are actually redefining what work is and their relationship to work, sometimes by choice and sometimes just pure necessity. And here it is important for us to remember that the way we work is not preordained or cast in stone. In fact, over the span of human existence, work has been organized in many different ways. And to this day, it is practiced very differently in different parts of the world and in different communities. What we consider the norm today, highly institutionalized work done through formal organizations and employment, is actually more of an aberration rather than the norm. In the totality of human experience, we've spent only a tiny amount of time in institutional organized work, attached to formal hierarchical organizations with career ladders and formal performance reviews. This doesn't mean that we were just sitting around doing nothing. We worked, we created, we traded, we just did it very differently based on how the economy and political systems were organized and a very different set of technologies and beliefs prevailing at that time. It is only in the last 100 years that we've perfected this kind of an organization. In fact, it's kind of a social technology for organizing production, for getting things done. Today, however, with the help of digital and connective technologies, we're getting things done in new ways, in very different ways. Whether it's farmers in China or influencers and creators or Uber drivers, all these people are using a different set of technologies that allow them to reach customers or fans and make money without being attached to formal organizations. Technology, of course, is enabling us to do things differently, create value in different ways. When we think about future work, we often think about automation or displacement of jobs, tasks, or workers. But technologies actually can reshape work in multiple different ways. They can change the content of work. As I said, there wasn't such an occupation as influencer or rural e-commerce specialist even a few years ago. Technologies can also reshape who controls our work, how we access work, and how we get paid. But technology is not the full story. Cultural and social norms, government policies and regulations shape how these technologies are deployed, who owns them, and their impact. The same set of technologies and platforms are regulated very differently in Europe than they are in the United States. And how people use platforms and the content they produce varies, of course, in different countries. Those of you familiar with IFTS work probably recognize the two-curve framework. It is a framework that describes a transition from one paradigm, one way of doing things, to a different way of doing things. And our research over the past decade leads us to believe that we're actually in a period of a very fundamental transformation in how we structure work, our attitudes towards work, and how we organize our labor resources. All of the signals that we're seeing on the horizon are pointing in that direction. In other words, this is a perfect futures moment for work, labor, and organizations. It is a moment for us to develop a deep understanding of what is happening and to engage in an effort to shape the future in a desirable direction. As many of you know, we also believe that we're not passive bystanders or victims of the future. We have agency to shape the kind of future we want to live in. Which is why, with the help of several foundations, IFTF has launched the Equitable Enterprise Initiative. We envision this initiative to serve as a hub for research, for scenario building, for public engagement, and policy innovations aimed at shaping the new curve of work. By equitable enterprise, we mean forms of organizing business activities and value creation in ways that distribute social economic benefits of such activities broadly, not just to investors, but also to those who contribute to them and the larger communities in which they operate. In short, we want to retire Milton Friedman's tired pronouncement that the only social responsibility of business is to create value to shareholders, and instead shape the new curve of work based on the belief that the only social responsibility of business is to maximize the community well-being and equitable distribution of economic returns from its activities. We're lucky to have the support of a group of very foresightful foundations that is allowing us to engage in this initiative. We have a great internal team and also an amazing team of external advisors and contributors who come from academia, social movements, labor, technology, and other areas.